Well, if there's one thing that last cast over taught me, it's to not try to cast before you have your coffee. But we've got our coffee, so let's get more coffee. Donations, of course, by the bottom right. Oh, he's so good at this sort of thing. Let's say we're going to be casting some PvT. Let's say we're going to be featuring the Shambler versus Eud64, and let's say we're starting on Axiom. We got 2 games to cast, and we've got more after that between these two that I've just now noticed. I've been in the backlog for a while. But this set of games was played on the 4th of May, so it's hot off the presses, fresh from the release repository tournament patch. So, you know, you got a little bit of ZBZ preview on pre-release yesterday, but listen, dude, forget about that. We're going to be going back on to a world with no Zerg in it. No, Zerg not here, in fact. And Shambler going for the pylon by his expansion. Of course, he is in the bottom left as the Protoss with Eud64. Perhaps a new tournament contender, a tournament challenger coming on in here in the Terran as the top right. I would love to see what EUD cooks up for us in the future, man. Let me just tell you something, okay? A little bit of a story for you guys. So EUD and Eud64 and Krankendow and, you know, a couple other people have been playing, and, you know, some of them are pretty damn good, man. Like, some of them are honestly capable of potentially winning the next Acropolis, which sounds crazy to say, but they're certainly at least capable of, like, getting up there, right? Now, admittedly, we will have a tournament coming up in May, probably sort of like 2nd or 3rd week of May. We'll see about the timing, where we will have the ability to say, hey guys, why don't you see if you can spank some newcomers who happen to be pretty high-level Brood War players. I'm thinking about players like, you know, DeWalt might be interested, certainly some players of that sort of caliber, right? I have made inroads with a couple of those kinds of people, at least the sort of upper echelons of the foreign Brood War ladder. So let's say that happens. Who's going to be able to stand against them? Well, I would say that, like, people like our old guard, you know, Shambler being one of them with his 2-gate opener here, and people like EUD, Eud64, who are newer players, but definitely have taken to playing super fast in the meta. And I just feel like that's really cool, man. It's really exciting to imagine what they're all going to say, what they're all going to do when some random people they've never seen before start spanking them with strategies that they could never have imagined. Speaking of, we do have that forward fulcrum. We have seen this. Actually, we saw Newt do this against Hupsea recently in the throne room stage. So I think it's a strategy that EUD kind of pioneered to some degree, and at least as far as I'm aware. And Top Ramen's been doing it, and, you know, again, now Newt has been doing it. So it's spreading through the ranks, but it will be a Hierophant first to deal with the Vultures, and this is a pretty crippling position here. He could have thrown down a mine, I think, a little bit sooner, but then again, I mean, a little bit awkward positioning from that Hierophant, but still could have maybe done something there. And okay, the stun happens, but because the scribes feast upon its corpse, who's the real Vulture? Well, not that one, that's for sure. Oh, he gets stunned anyway. Well, you know, there are things there. There are things there. One thing that's really cool about the stun is that it does actually stun, like, a bunch of effects. Like, it stuns the shield regen. It stuns, like, just a bunch of things, right? And one of the things I was thinking about is, like, we should probably enforce that it stuns certain positive buff timers. Like, I was thinking maybe if you're a Simulacra, you know, if you're a Simulacra type player and you build a Sim and then it gets attacked, but then it gets stunned, like, the stun should probably block it, right? So I feel like that could be really cool anyway. Now, we'll see how that one goes. There was indeed a pause. We've got Vultures out the wazoo here for EUD, just slamming them down. And meanwhile, Shambler thinking about taking an expansion behind his 2-gate. He should be very well afforded in that respect. Unfortunately, no new Hierophant graphic, guys. I know, I keep talking about it, and it hasn't yet graced our castovers, but I'm sure somebody will fix that soon by sending me a pre-release Protoss game. We keep on improving the game. Actually, the next release lets you pick your favored color, interestingly enough. Of course, you can... There's a couple of cool things that you can do. You can shuffle your preferred colors, so you can have, like, say, oh, here's preferred color number 1, and here I have, like, 5 options, and I can choose to, like, randomize between those 5. That's something that you can do. And, of course, there's some things like you can't pick, like, a bright blue color and then expect to get that on the ice tile set, right? So stuff like that is indeed prohibited. Now, speaking of prohibited, Shambler was not really able to scout too much, but when you see this many Vultures, I think that's all the scout you need. Pulling on back to the ramp, where he is going to be a little bit more on the safe side, and he's still, you know, mostly focusing on the Hierophant play. I don't know about that one. I feel like Dracodons would definitely help out a little bit sooner here. But, you know, we'll see how it plays out for him. Vultures falling back, only one of them falling so far, some of them very low indeed, but with the front line gone, you know, this is something where the Hierophants are not nearly as tanky as the Dracodons, and many of them are going to start to fall. Oh, he attacks his own Vulture. That was a big missed opportunity there for EUD. I think he could have maybe, it sounds crazy to say, but I think he could have killed 2 or 3 more Hierophants had he not done that sort of misfire. You got to remember that the DPS is lowered when you have 5 stacks of the Hierophant passive, so getting rid of those Hierophants allows you to sort of run away with it a little bit more. Nonetheless, Shambler will be okay, but those are expensive losses, right? 50 gas a pop for the Hierophants, so it's not nothing, but you can choose to try to spam them, as Dead Infested has done recently on a video. More and more mines being laid. Still just rocking this forward Fulcrum as far as the timing goes, but he wants to go ahead and lift that off now. Thinking about probably peeling back and using, I'm going to guess he's going to put an add-on down at some point. I'm assuming it'll be a Palladium, but we'll find out pretty soon here as he continues to produce the Vulture and Goliath combo. He's got a second quarry up and running, so he should be able to stretch ahead with the worker count. Looking at the situation here, he's going to have 3 worker queues. Actually, Shambler's Embassy is already done, and he has a witness on the way. So, making good timing here for the Protoss. I'm impressed by the sort of... One of the things that I think I've seen out of Shambler this tournament has been that he has been able to... Like, when he's playing as Zerg, you feel like you can feel the aggression come in. You can feel his ability to just sort of try to stomp you in the early stages, maybe like constantly looking for those winning positions. But I feel like as Protoss, he's had to temper that because of his, you know, early gateway shenanigans don't go his way. Then what does he do? How does he find a transition out of that into something more macro-focused? I think now he's getting that a lot better. He's really nailed that part down where he knows when to put down the Embassy and when to put down the Nexus. And he has that, I think, a little bit more presently than what I've seen out of his Zerg. And now with the Witness arriving to scout things out, he will continue to have some pretty good positions there. You can just use these Legionnaires to sort of play Minesweeper. There's no punish just yet for EUD. And the Witness can obviously stick around as well. But he wants to get into the base and see what he's going up against. He sees that there's only 2 Fulcrums, so he's not really worried too much about the army composition for EUD. Shambler will be able to hold him at an arm's length. He's banking some resources right now, so Shambler thinking about maybe switching it up. Going for an Ardent Authority in the natural does make some sense, and just otherwise producing a lot of workers, because he knows that his opponent is only on the 2 Fulcrum. He can't really push out too much from this. You know, even if he moves across the map right now, the Gateway Army can spin back up and start to, you know, catch itself, right? The Legionnaire well-placed and well-considered. Even clearing one more mine on the way out. Witness confirming that there's nothing really back at home. And, you know, if these units come back at home, then suddenly, you know, you don't have to worry too much. You could see as the Shambler responding by making some Dracodons, but this is very Zerg-esque as well, right? Seeing what your opponent is doing and then choosing to just make workers and tech and not worry too much about the actual units. But at the same time, the Atlas is on the way, and that's not something that Shambler has cited just yet. His Witness moving down to watch for drops, it seems. And there will be a Watchdog off there to sort of do the same thing, funnily enough. Rogue Gallery, okay, interesting. Adding another pylon as well. Third base on the way for the Protoss. So, yeah, Shambler's on the ball. I like his position. I feel like he's favored. But if EUD can get the Atlas up and running before the timing of any sort of push comes to hit him, and it looks like it'll end up being an Acantor, which I'm always watching for an Envoy to pair with it. Just like in StarCraft 1, you see the Reaver, you think Shuttle. Well, in Cosmonarchy, you see the Acantor, you think Envoy. But there is no Envoy rolled up yet. So that is actually going to be a slow crawl, it looks like. And, you know, we'll keep watching the production tab in the top, see if that changes. A couple Stockades coming out. Interesting that it's 2 of them. I don't think we're going to see a bio transition, but we'll see what EUD has up his sleeve. Starpad coming as well. Random Vulture flying out just to see, and does indeed confirm that the Gateway Force has relocated to a forward position. There is no third, and no third on the way, mind you. There's not even like a treasury or a ministry that's going to come on down. And indeed, the first stockade for a vestry, adding another fulcrum after. We still have no palladiums, so no real like scaling add-ons here for the Terran to try to set themselves up into a solid position. Anseal coming though, so that'll be there for detection. You know, eventually remove this witness from the premises if he spots it. Now we're seeing the Palladiums come in. The Atlas is done, but Tier 2, it looks like it's just going to be a single starport for now. That's what I was watching for, is like, what is he actually using the Tier 2 for? Because remember, the Palladiums you can make at Tier 1. You don't need to wait for the Atlas to finish for that. So far, the only Tier 2 stuff is the single starport. You want a little bit more of a tech timing than that, right? Because otherwise maybe you're going to be a little bit on the underwhelming stage. Putting more and more rogue galleries to the front is kind of an interesting choice. They have a little bit less health and shields than the Gateway, so they're not quite as tanky. So but you know, they in a pinch they'll serve, and they're not super expensive. Just will be a little bit painful if those end up going down, and that was actually like a big part of Shambler's composition. He's mostly just filtering in Vagrants right now. And I like the idea. I mean, the double life that the Vagrant has, where once it dies, it is given a different look. Oh, look at this. The Witness getting slapped by the Ant Seal here, but it will scout the Atlas, it will scout the Starport. No add-on just yet revealed by that Starport. Captaincy's coming for EUD, so he's going to be scaling up the bio part of the tech tree now. He has a second stockade, but he hasn't put an add on it yet, so that's interesting. I wonder if it's just for Hurricanes. So far, it looks like that's what it is. So he's just going to keep on making the sort of anti-melee, anti-zealot situation, and he's kind of guessed right. He hasn't scouted at all, so I don't like his position as much, but it's going to be a Cantors, which do pretty good splash damage and will help get rid of the Antseal bubble, but also help get rid of the Hurricanes. But if it was Architects, and you scout like the Ardent Authority, you think, oh, it's Architects, the siege unit for the Protoss, then at that point I'm thinking to myself, okay, yeah, Hurricanes make a lot of sense because they're not going to die nearly as regularly, right? All right, another Phalanx is going to go ahead and get deployed over here. We've got a Treasury, because now EUD is definitely thinking about another base. Adding another Fulcrum, interesting. Wants to maybe continuously produce like Goliaths, as well as the Madcaps and the Phalanxes, right? Could be a thing. He has his commandment, so I guess we'll see a Seraph come out pretty soon, but he's a little bit low on Vespene right now. Could be Azazel as well, mind you. Azazel very good as a defensive sort of like specialist, that a Bulwark type of spellcaster. Nothing coming yet. Fourth base for Shambler, though. I feel like he's running away with the macro game, and it's been a little bit too passive for EUD. He's going to see what he can make happen over here, and losing this whole stack of units would not be ideal for Shambler, because he does want to still have a little bit of a buffer for his superior force that's back at home. And right now, it looks like maybe EUD is a little bit more scared than he should be, particularly of such a small force, but it's going to allow Shambler to trade a little bit, you know, maybe get one extra Vulture here and not lose too many extra units. Yeah, the double of Cantor is going to run roughshod over this position here, I feel like. But, all right, EUD dropping his Treasury and just inching forward. But I feel like at this point, this is not really the time to inch forward. Your opponent is going to go ahead and continue having a better sort of base count than you. They've had their third up for so long, so it does feel like, in the grand scheme of things, I mean, Shambler hasn't been capping any of his geysers, but other than that, I feel like he's been playing the macro style pretty well. He has a lot of minerals right now, so you could actually cast all of his geysers right now. He could cap this, and this, and it would be 1,200 minerals. So he spent a little bit down since then, but definitely it would have been an option. It's a question of, you know, does he want to sacrifice the gas income for that period of time? Now, the Azazel has made it to the field, so we might see like a dematrixed Huracan or something like that for the purpose of shielding and allowing the push. No Sentinels behind this, so the fact that this force has stayed alive and stayed on this side of the map is maybe going to give EUD some pause, because, you know, sure, he's going to have some powerful units coming on in, but the one Legionnaire in the middle of the map reveals that the force is out, and there's nothing here, because EUD spent all of his money on the units, which is great. You know, he's keeping his macro up and running as far as the skirmishes are concerned. But at this point, you know, Shambler, maybe he's in trouble with this push. It really depends on how that engagement goes, but I could see a really nice backstab just charging on into the third. Shambler a little bit more focused on trying to spend down his minerals. Has managed to do so. Again, not really capping anything, but putting some gateways down off to the right-hand side. Stationing a Cantors on the high ground. Definitely going to give him a little bit of something. However, the Phalanxes are more than equipped to deal with this, right? Like, you have to remember that. As long as they can get vision, you can deploy there. The Cantors will start to reveal themselves. Oh, those are going to be some big hits. Okay, well, the Shamans don't end up falling just yet, but they are going to be sitting ducks for those targets. A huge swarm of Phalanxes on the side, and is it going to be enough? These Acantor are still staying alive for now, but the suppressive fire from the Goliaths and the successive Phalanx shots going to be more than enough to wipe it. Where are the rest of the forces for Shambler? He's got more units coming in from the right-hand side. The Acantor will indeed have that extra force, and Patriarch goes down. That's a pretty big loss for resources. The Uptecton about halfway done right now, and I don't think one is going to cut it at this point, but he's dealt with most of the units that aren't named the Phalanx. So at the very least, there is that. And on the left-hand side, oh man, this Architect is going to get a nice secured kill. Sure, it comes at the cost of its own life, but that's still more than enough. Now he can kind of clean this up. And suddenly, where are the rest of the units? A mantle was made at some point, so we do have the Durandal on the field. The question is it going to be enough? I'm not so sure. We do have two Acantors still here, still working, and charging on forward. I mean, the Engram and the Uptecton combining to dish out some pretty good damage, but eventually the Engram is brought down, so this raid is somewhat successful. But what's the reaction, right? Shambler's floating a lot of money in the meanwhile. EUD keeping his stuff spent down, but that means that he has no tech flexibility. 2 Ancestral Archives get started at the 4th base, which I don't even know if it was revealed by EUD's position there. Not really critical infrastructure damage dealt. Now clearing his way to the 3 o'clock position, EUD wants to secure another base off the back of this, I think, and it makes sense. So he will eventually do so, deploying his Shaman to get the healing done, but a little bit far away now, so wisely unpacks. And still no defenses coming over here, putting a treasury down for that purpose so that he can actually secure that extra base. But now we come up over here, and the Gateway Army, the Vagrants as well, definitely proving to be a pretty big, successful threat. He's going to have to unpack these units and move them back over because this reinforcement point is under duress. Certainly under siege, but hey, the Uptecton's a little bit split. The Vulture's coming out, and the Phalanxes can now deploy. So maybe he's out of the woods. Maybe. I think as soon as these 2 extra Ancestral Archives start blinking, though, we might be in for a bit of a rude awakening, because ultimately this force, there's not really that much chaff. I mean, well, okay, never mind. There's a lot of Vagrants and Zealots coming out now, so there is that at the very least. I love the forward gateways. I think that Shambler is well equipped to set up another base in the bottom right. It looks like he'll be doing that pretty soon. Finally, we see some anti-surface defense. Avoided the air unit so far, has Shambler, and even though there is the starport, it's mostly been used for like the Azazel and the Seraph now coming, so there is that as well. Man, this is a nice long macro PVT. I feel like in StarCraft 1, this is one of the more interesting matchups, right? So it's cool to see that kind of happening over here as well. But here we go. Another engagement coming just as the Treasury makes touchdown. Remember, that's a lot easier to snipe than the Ministries, and these Phalanxes were not in position. Where's the D-Matrix? The Azazel goes after the Shaman. That could be a critical target, but I would have loved the Durandal as well. Instead, he tries to chase down the Azazel and moves way too close to that Durandal, getting so many hits. Now it's a question of whether or not he can breach this without losing too many extra units. Nice D-Matrix onto the Vulture. Kips absorbs so much damage, including a shot from the Uptecton. But the Acantors are arriving. There's 3 of them. You gotta watch out because you can't be clumped up for that. Maybe he thought he was out of the woods, but I'm not so certain that he is. A lot of Phalanxes are over here, though, so I feel like maybe any further moves here are going to be a bit of an overextension. You can see the pummeling that Shambler's tech units are taking as he tries desperately to shut down this 4th base before it can really begin. Couple more units going to swing on in here. Waypointing the rest of his workers. Obviously, Shambler has a way bigger worker count right now. It's something that we haven't talked about yet this cast. Double tapping Ahmed. That's not what you want to see. Come on, bro. He's got 4 health and 48. Certainly a situation where the Patriarchs are proving to be very, very potent right now. But they are expensive units. You got to factor that in, right? So it's a good thing that Shambler evacuates with those 2. Link back up with the rest of his army. 3 Uptectons per run. I mean, where have we seen mass Uptecton before? That wasn't so long ago. And I don't really like the position here for EUD, mostly because I don't really see how he's possibly go. Okay, he's making a Cyclops, so I guess he's actually infallible. But no, in seriousness, I don't actually know how he's going to defend this. I mean, he doesn't have any more Sentinels up. His Phalanxes aren't by the ramp, so he's going to allow Shambler to get up and running over here. I feel like if this base gets broken, that's kind of it, right? It feels like that's all he's got. He had that one Vulture mine as well, but it gets detonated by his own attempt at building the structures. Good irradiate, good armor pen, nice D-Matrix onto the Seraph itself. Not a bad shout there, but he definitely needed more. Just an onslaught of high-tier Protoss units cleaning up the mid-table of the Terran arsenal and destroying that treasury as well. Without that base and without really any easy way to reinforce, this position is compromised, and he loses his spellcasters. Not only that, but what does he really have to fight this? EUD has to concede, and that's GG. Nice little force there at the end from Shambler. I do think that EUD had some scary pushes, and the Phalanx count, man, it was so high in the middle of the game. I think maybe if it was like 2 or 3 less Phalanxes and that many resources and time cost worth of other units to sort of serve as fodder, there's might be a chance that his big push in the middle of the game towards that valley area that Shambler had all the Acantors on the high ground at, maybe that could have helped. Maybe Azazel spellcasting could have turned the tide as well. But nonetheless, a really exciting game 1. Join us tomorrow for game 2, because there's another one to cast between these two, and I look forward to seeing you then.